On the outskirts of Inverness, where the river moves like a slow, cold breath through the highlands, an 8-year-old girl begins to wake up in the middle of the night, always at the same hour, always with the same sentence on her lips. Her name is Aurora McDowell. From the outside, her life looks ordinary, a small house of stone. A father who wakes early for work. A mother who folds laundry by the window, watching the fog roll in from the hills. A quiet street where the only sound, most nights, is the distant hum of a car passing by, or the soft drip of rain from the eaves. But inside this house, something has started to move in the silence. It begins with a dream. Aurora says she sees the sky. Not above her, but opening in front of her like a curtain made of light. No figures, no faces, just a brightness that feels alive, as if it is looking back. In the dream, everything around her goes still. Time seems to stop, and even her own heartbeat sounds distant, like it belongs to someone else. And then, in that impossible stillness, she hears it. Footsteps, not heavy, not loud, just certain, like someone already knows the way. The first time it happens, she wakes up with a small gasp. Her parents think it is only a nightmare. They hold her, comfort her, tell her it was just a dream. But Aurora shakes her head, her eyes too calm for a child who has just been afraid. She looks at them, and with a voice that doesn't tremble, she says, "He is already on his way." The room goes quiet. Nothing flickers, nothing moves. There is no thunder, no shaking walls, no voice from the clouds, only the lamp on the bedside table. And yet, for a second, its light seems to soften, as if it is listening too. They tell themselves it is nothing, a phrase she heard somewhere, a child's imagination. But the next night, at the same hour, Aurora wakes again. Same dream. Same opening in the sky, same footsteps drawing closer, same sentence. Now her mother's hands hesitate before touching her shoulder. Her father stands longer at the doorway, watching, as if expecting something just beyond what he can see. In a small house by the River Ness, an invisible countdown has begun. A child says someone is already on his way. And the question that no one dares falar in voz alta is simple. If the heavens truly started to open, would you recognize it in the eyes of a child? Would you believe her or look away? The first days after Aurora's declaration unfold like slow waves moving across the quiet streets of Inverness. Nothing outwardly dramatic happens, and yet, inside the McDowell household, the air feels different. Thicker, almost aware. Her parents try to continue their routines, but something in their daughter's stillness unsettles them in a way they cannot name. Her mother begins waking earlier, standing at the kitchen window while the sky is still a deep blue. She watches the fog crawl low over the river, moving with a quiet purpose, as if carrying messages she cannot interpret. She holds her mug tightly, as though warmth alone can anchor her. Some mornings she glances toward Aurora's closed door and wonders if the girl is awake or listening. Her father copes differently. He becomes more present, more observant, watching Aurora's every gesture. He studies her with the same caution someone uses when approaching an animal they love but no longer fully understand. He tells himself that she is the same child. Same freckles, same soft voice, same habit of counting the lines in the wood floor with her toes. But there is something in her eyes now, a depth, a knowing. Aurora, meanwhile, moves through the house as if guided by currents no one else can feel. She pauses at the doorway before entering a room, as though checking for something unseen. She touches walls lightly with the back of her fingers, not searching, not afraid, just acknowledging an invisible presence that seems to follow her quietly. At school, teachers notice subtle changes. She no longer raises her hand, no longer hums while drawing, no longer laughs at the small moments that usually bring joy to children. Instead, she looks out the window toward the northern sky with an expression that suggests she is waiting. But not impatiently, more like someone who already knows the time and is simply counting the breaths until it arrives. One afternoon during recess, the wind shifts suddenly. It doesn't howl or roar, it simply changes direction with an intention that feels almost deliberate. The other children react with surprise, but Aurora closes her eyes and listens, her hands hanging still by her sides. When she opens them again, she looks toward the distant hills and whispers something no one hears. That evening, her mother finds her standing in the hallway, barefoot, staring at a thin beam of light coming through a crack in the curtains. Aurora's face is calm, illuminated by the narrow thread of gold. When her mother approaches, there is a slight hesitation in the air, like the room itself is holding its breath. "Aurora," she whispers. "What are you doing, sweetheart?" The girl does not look away from the light. "It's getting closer," she says softly. Her mother's heart drops. "What is, darling?" Aurora turns her head just a fraction, enough for her mother to see the seriousness in her eyes. The opening. The word feels too large for such a small voice. Her mother kneels, trying to steady her breathing. "Is it like in your dream?" Aurora nods. But it's not only in the dream anymore. Before she can ask more, the hallway light flickers. Not a violent stutter, but a gentle pulse. Once, twice, then it stabilizes. The moment is small, subtle, easy to dismiss, yet impossible to forget. That night, Aurora lies awake, staring at the ceiling. She does not blink. She does not move. She simply listens to the quiet of the house, to the rhythmic breathing of her parents behind their closed door, to the soft ticking of the clock beside her bed. At exactly 3:11 a.m., she turns her head toward the window. The sky outside is dark, undisturbed, but Aurora smiles faintly, as if responding to something only she can see. "He is closer now," she murmurs. "I can feel the steps." "Adi!" And somewhere in the silence of the house, a chill moves through the air, gentle, precise, like a message sliding across the boundary between worlds. The nights that follow begin to shape themselves around a quiet tension the family cannot name. Something unseen presses gently at the edges of their days, not threatening but undeniably present, like a visitor waiting just beyond the threshold. Aurora wakes at 3:11 a.m. with unfailing precision, no alarm, no sound. Nothing triggers her rising except the same invisible pull, as if someone touches her shoulder from a world no one else can reach. Her parents try to ignore it at first, but the routine becomes impossible to dismiss. Her mother starts keeping her phone on the nightstand, brightness turned low. Each night, she checks the digits glowing silently in the dark. Every time they shift from 3:10 to 3:11, there is a soft movement from the other room. Aurora sitting up without hesitation, her breathing steady, her posture alert. Her father finally witnesses it one night. The moment the clock changes, he hears the subtle creak of her mattress. He pushes off the blankets, his chest tight with uncertainty, and walks toward her room. She sits upright, facing the window, her eyes fixed on the sky as though she recognizes a pattern no one else can see. "Is it happening again?" he asks quietly. Aurora nods, not turning away from the darkness beyond the glass. "The opening grows wider," she says, "and closer." He steps into the room, his shadow stretching across the floor. "How do you know?" Aurora tilts her head slightly, as if trying to translate something felt rather than heard. "Because the steps sound nearer, not loud, just clearer, like someone is finding the path." The words unsettle him in a way he cannot admit. There is no fear in her voice, no confusion, only certainty. During the day, Aurora's behavior shifts subtly. She notices details others overlook: the shift in the breeze, the way light falls at odd angles, the silence between distant sounds. Sometimes she pauses mid-sentence, listening to something no one else can hear. Other times she places her hand on the wall, her palm open, as though sensing a faint vibration. At school, her teachers grow concerned. Aurora no longer participates in group activities. She draws quietly, always the same motif, a vertical seam of radiant light descending from the sky. Each illustration becomes more detailed, more deliberate, as though she is documenting an unfolding event rather than imagining it. One afternoon, during a routine art session, her teacher kneels beside her. "Aurora, what is this line of light you keep painting?" Aurora studies the image, her expression calm. "It's the place where he appears," she says softly, "the way he enters." The teacher freezes. Something in Aurora's tone unsettles her. Not the words themselves, but the stillness behind them. She gently pats Aurora's shoulder and moves on, but the image stays in her mind long after the class ends. At home, the atmosphere thickens. The house becomes unusually quiet in the evenings, as if the walls are absorbing rather than reflecting sound. Objects don't move. Lights don't flicker. Nothing dramatic happens, yet the stillness feels intentional, like a held breath. One night they decide to take Aurora to a doctor. The visit feels ordinary, almost disappointingly normal. The physician listens, smiles kindly, runs simple tests, and assures them that children often experience vivid dream cycles. He suggests rest, reassurance, and patience. But reassurance becomes harder when the family drives home along the dark river, headlights reflecting on the water like trembling stars. From the back seat, Aurora places her hand against the glass, her fingers spread wide. "It's thin here," she murmurs. Her mother turns around. "Thin?" Aurora nods. "The boundary, between this side and the next." Her father keeps his eyes on the road, jaw tight, knuckles white around the steering wheel. Back home, the hour 3:11 transforms into something sacred and terrifying, an appointment the family never agreed to keep, but cannot escape. Some nights, they wake moments before it arrives, sensing a subtle shift in the air. Other nights, they lie stiff in their beds, listening for the small sound that confirms Aurora has risen again. On one particular night, the house is unusually still. Even the usual hums of appliances sound muted, swallowed by the dark. Aurora's parents sit at the kitchen table, both awake, both unwilling to sleep through another unexplained moment. When 3:11 comes, Aurora appears in the doorway without making a sound. Her eyes are wide, calm, expectant. "He is almost here," she says. Her mother's breath catches. "How do you know?" Aurora looks around the room slowly, as if reading the air itself. Because the silence is changing, it listens now. Her father feels a coldness move across his skin, not from fear of danger, but from the sense that something vast, something ancient, lies just outside their understanding. That night none of them sleep, and somewhere beyond the clouds of Inverness, something seems to be shifting, quietly, faithfully, drawing nearer with every breath. In the days that follow, the McDowell home becomes a place where silence carries meaning. No one speaks loudly anymore, no one laughs abruptly, even footsteps soften as though the entire house has entered a kind of reverence or precaution. Something in Aurora's presence reshapes the way her parents move, breathe, observe. They do not discuss this openly. Instead, they communicate in small, practical gestures. Her mother closes doors gently. Her father avoids turning on bright lights at night. Both watch Aurora from the corners of their eyes, waiting for signs, or perhaps permission to understand. Aurora does not behave like a frightened child. She is not restless, not withdrawn, not panicked. If anything, she seems more anchored than before, as though her inner world is growing steadier while the world around her trembles with uncertainty. She walks lightly, speaks sparsely, and looks toward the sky with a quiet recognition, as if reading a language that has always been present but hidden in plain sight. One evening, As the fading light paints the window frames in soft amber, Aurora steps outside without a coat. Her parents rush after her but stop when they see her standing in the yard, her face turned upward. The sky is ordinary, low clouds, muted blue, no stars yet. But Aurora's eyes shine as if she sees something rising just behind the veil of grey. Her father approaches slowly. "What do you see, sweetheart?" Aurora lifts a hand, palm open toward the sky. "Light," she whispers. "Not here yet, but close, like it's waiting for the right moment to breathe." He follows her gaze. He sees nothing extraordinary, only a sky preparing for evening, but something in her voice makes his heartbeat shift, as though recognizing a message meant for another sense entirely. Inside, her mother watches from the kitchen window, gripping the sink's edge as if it can steady her. Every instinct urges her to protect Aurora, shield her from whatever is unfolding. Yet another part of her, a softer and deeper part, feels as though she is witnessing a sacred process she must not interrupt. That night, Aurora doesn't fall asleep immediately. She lies still, eyes open, listening. There is no sound of footsteps from the dream, no sudden flicker of light, no visible disturbance. Yet her breathing shifts subtly, like someone aligning themselves with an unseen rhythm. Her parents watch from the doorway. "Aurora," her mother whispers, "are you okay?" Aurora nods. He is walking slowly now. The distance is almost gone. The sentence chills the room in a way no cold breeze could. Later, long past midnight, her father sits alone in the living room. The house is dark except for a small lamp casting a warm pool of light over the coffee table. He scrolls through articles on his phone again, desperate for explanations. Not because he doubts Aurora, but because he fears the implications if she is telling the truth. He reads about sleepwalking, auditory hallucinations, childhood spiritual episodes, neurological patterns that mimic religious experiences. Each possibility seems rational on the screen, yet hollow compared to the clarity in Aurora's eyes. He lowers the phone and presses his palms together, unsure whether he is praying or simply trying to hold himself together. Meanwhile, in her bedroom, Aurora sits up again at 3:11 a.m. This time, she doesn't speak immediately. Her head tilts slightly, as if listening for something faint but familiar. A moment later, she smiles. Not the wide smile of a child, but a small, serene curve of recognition. "He is close enough to hear us now," she murmurs into the dark. The next morning is unusually still. Not the stillness of weather, but something subtler, like a held note in an unseen symphony. Birds outside delay their first chirps. The river seems to move with a heavier quiet. Even the air feels dense, expectant. Aurora rises from bed, her steps slow and deliberate. When she enters the kitchen, her parents feel the shift immediately. She sits at the table, folds her hands, and looks at them with gentle seriousness. "You feel it too," she says. Her father clears his throat. "Feel what, darling?" Aurora lowers her gaze to the table, tracing an invisible shape across the wood. The nearness. It's like the sky is thinner today. Her mother presses a hand to her forehead. "Aurora, sweetheart, this is a lot for you to carry." Aurora lifts her eyes, and there is no burden in them, only awareness. "I'm not carrying it," she says. "I'm just noticing it." Her father leans forward. "Is he coming soon?" Aurora's expression softens, almost tender. "He is already on his way." "That hasn't changed." She pauses, then adds, "But today, the world hears him better." Throughout the day, peculiar moments unfold. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that would appear strange to someone unfamiliar with the context. But in the McDowell home, every detail matters. A glass on the counter vibrates slightly when no one is near. A draft moves through a closed room, not cold, but warm. A light beam shifts across the floor in a direction that doesn't match the sun. Each event is subtle enough to forget, yet impossible to ignore. At sunset, Aurora stands again by the window. She places a hand on the cold glass, her breath fogging the surface. "Soon," she whispers, and somewhere beyond the highlands, beyond the river and the rooftops and the quiet trembling of the evening air, the invisible distance continues to shrink. Something approaches, not with spectacle, not with thunder, but with certainty. As if the heavens themselves are preparing to open, and the first witness is a child. The first person outside the family to truly notice the change in Aurora is not a doctor, nor a priest, nor a specialist of any kind. It is her grandmother. She arrives one Friday afternoon, carrying a worn leather bag and the smell of rain in her coat. Her steps are slow, but her eyes are clear, trained over a lifetime to see not only what stands in front of her, but what trembles quietly behind it. The moment she steps into the house, she pauses. There is nothing visibly different. The same narrow hallway, the same framed photographs, the same familiar furniture worn by years of use. And yet she feels it, a weight in the stillness, a quiet that isn't empty but expectant. Her daughter hugs her, holding on a little longer than usual. "You made it," Aurora's mother whispers. "Of course I did," the grandmother answers softly. "You sounded different on the phone." She doesn't ask why, not yet. Aurora appears at the end of the hallway barefoot, her hair a little messy from an afternoon nap. She looks smaller than her stories, but when her eyes meet her grandmother's, something in the room shifts. The older woman feels it, a subtle stirring, like the air between them has been noticed by someone else. "Aurora," she says with a gentle smile. "Come here, my love." The girl walks forward, unhurried. She wraps her arms around her grandmother's waist and rests her head against her chest, listening to the steady, aging heartbeat. "You feel it too," Aurora says quietly. Her grandmother stiffens almost imperceptibly. "Feel what, little one?" "The nearness," Aurora replies. "Things are thinner now, softer, like the world is ready to open." The grandmother closes her eyes for a second. Later, after dinner, when Aurora has gone to her room, the adults sit at the table under the dim kitchen light. The grandmother listens as her daughter and son-in-law recount the nights, the dreams, the hour 3:11, the paintings of the split sky, the strange stillness that seems to wrap itself around the house. She doesn't interrupt. She just watches their faces, the way fear and love twist together in their expressions. Finally, her son-in-law sighs. "We don't know if this is spiritual, psychological, something we should treat, something we should pray about, or something we should run from." Her mother's eyes fill with tears. "She's our little girl. I don't want her to carry something too big for her." The grandmother leans back in her chair, her hands resting on the faded wood. "When I was a girl," she begins slowly, "there was a woman in our village who claimed she heard things no one else heard. Not voices, not noises, just a kind of calling. People laughed at her. Others were afraid of her. A few listened." She looks toward the hallway, toward Aurora's closed door. "Years later," she continues, "some of the things she said would happen did. Not in bright lights, not with spectacles, just quietly, like seeds growing in dark soil. I learned something from that. The world is not as closed as we pretend it is." Her daughter wipes her eyes. "So you think Aurora is—" "What? Seeing something real?" "I don't know," the grandmother answers honestly. "But I know this. There is more danger in crushing what might be holy than there is in carefully watching what we don't yet understand." That night, the grandmother insists on sleeping in Aurora's room. She sets up a small chair near the bed, a blanket over her knees, her hands gently clasped. Aurora doesn't protest. She simply looks at her grandmother with that strange, tender seriousness. "You'll hear it," Aurora says, pulling the covers up to her chin. If he allows it. The grandmother swallows. If who allows it, darling? Aurora's gaze drifts upward. The one who is already on his way. The words fall softly, but the air feels heavier when they land. The house darkens. Hours pass. The grandmother fights off sleep, blinking slowly as the clock on the nightstand climbs through the night. She can hear the faint breathing of her granddaughter, the distant groan of pipes, the occasional whisper of wind against the glass. At 3:10 a.m., the room feels normal, cold, dark, ordinary. At 3:11 a.m., something changes. It is not a noise, not a light, not a movement. It is the silence. The silence thickens, deepens, becoming almost physical, like a soft pressure against the skin. The grandmother straightens in her chair, suddenly wide awake. Her breath sounds too loud in her own ears. Aurora opens her eyes. She does not gasp. She does not sit up abruptly. She simply turns her head slowly toward the window, her gaze steady and serene. "Do you feel it?" she asks. The grandmother hesitates. The rational part of her mind wants to say no. But another part, the ancient part that remembers old hymns whispered under blankets and stories of angels told by candlelight, cannot deny the strange presence in the quiet. "Yes," she answers, her voice barely more than air. "I feel something." Aurora's lips curve into the smallest hint of a smile. "He is nearer tonight," she says. "Closer than the clouds, closer than the wind, closer than your own heartbeat." The grandmother clutches the blanket, anxiety and awe wrestling inside her chest. And then it happens. The bedside lamp, which is turned off, glows faintly, not enough to fully light the room, but enough to soften the darkness. It doesn't flicker, it doesn't surge, it breathes like a pulse of warm light, then dims again. Once, twice, then stillness. No sound accompanies it, no electrical hum, no crackle, just that single, tender exhale of light. The grandmother's eyes fill with tears, not from fear, but from the overwhelming sense that something or someone has just brushed against the edge of their reality. Aurora closes her eyes again, as if reassured. "He knows we're awake," she whispers. "He always knows who is watching." The next morning, the grandmother refuses to explain away what she experienced. When her daughter asks, "Did you see something?" she doesn't embellish, doesn't dramatize. "I saw nothing," she says softly, "but I felt, and I cannot forget it." Her son-in-law looks torn. "So what do we do now?" The grandmother glances toward Aurora, who sits at the table, legs dangling, quietly eating breakfast as if nothing is different, as if the night did not bend around them. "We watch," she replies. "We listen, and we do not lie to ourselves about what we feel." From that day on, the entire house behaves like a listening body. Every creak of wood, every shift in temperature, every subtle change in light. They notice it all. Outside, Inverness continues as usual. Cars cross the bridge over the river, people buy groceries, children hurry to school under grey skies. No one suspects that inside a small house near the water, a family has begun to live inside a question that has no simple answer. If a presence truly is drawing near, if the heavens are in some quiet way beginning to open, why would the first sign come to a child? And why this child? Word of Aurora's strange certainty does not spread through drama or gossip. It leaks slowly, like light through a cracked door. It begins with a simple conversation between her teacher and the school counselor. "She's not disruptive," the teacher explains, fingers wrapped around a mug of lukewarm tea in the staff room. "She's quiet, polite, but there's something going on. She keeps drawing the same image, this vertical opening of light in the sky, and she talks about someone who is already on his way." The counselor frowns. Does she seem frightened? The teacher hesitates. That's the odd part. She's not scared at all. She's composed, as if she's waiting for a guest she already knows. The counselor schedules a meeting. Aurora sits across from her in a small office with soft chairs and a plant that struggles to survive in a dim corner. Sunlight filters through half-closed blinds, leaving thin lines of brightness across the floor. Aurora, the counselor says gently, your teachers tell me you've been having some strong dreams. Aurora nods, polite. Do you want to tell me about them? She looks at the counselor with calm, unwavering eyes. The sky opens, she says simply, not like a storm, like a door. There is light behind it, and I can hear steps. The counselor folds her hands in her lap. Whose steps do you think they are? Aurora doesn't rush to answer. She glances briefly toward the window, where a pale strip of sky is visible between clouds. I don't think, she replies softly. I know. They belong to the one who is already on his way. The counselor shifts slightly in her chair. And who is that, Aurora? Aurora's gaze returns to her. There is no arrogance, no desire to sound special. Only a steady, quiet conviction, the one who comes when the heavens open, she says. The counselor feels a subtle unease, not because of what Aurora says, but because of how she says it, without hesitation, without self-consciousness, as if simply stating a fact. Do these dreams scare you, she asks. Aurora shakes her head. They don't come to frighten me, they come to warn, to prepare. For what? Aurora's answer is soft, but it lands heavily in the room. For his arrival. The counselor writes notes after she leaves, using terms like symbolic imagery, heightened spirituality, possible coping mechanism. Yet, later that night, when she lies in bed and looks at the ceiling, she hears the echo of Aurora's small voice in the quiet and feels a shiver that has nothing to do with psychology. At home, things continue to deepen. The grandmother stays for several more days, unwilling to leave, while the house feels like a threshold. She follows Aurora with quiet respect, never demanding, never pressing, just watching. She notices how the girl pauses on certain spots in the hallway as if stepping over invisible lines, how she lingers by the window at certain hours, how the air seems almost tuned around her. One evening, rain falls steadily over Inverness, turning streets into blurred rivers of reflection. The sky hangs low and heavy, weighing on rooftops and treetops. The family gathers in the living room, no television, no music, just the sound of rain against glass. Aurora sits cross-legged on the floor, facing the window. He is walking through the rain, she says suddenly. Her father looks up. What do you mean? She doesn't answer immediately. Her eyes are distant, as if listening to something inside the storm. The distance between there and here is smaller in the rain, she explains. Water remembers him better. The grandmother inhales sharply. The room feels tighter, the air closing in around them. No one moves, as though any sudden motion might disturb whatever intangible path is being traced through their world. Then it happens. Not outside. In. The lamp in the corner brightens slightly, then softens, the light no longer just filling the room, but almost shaping it. The shadows shift, not away from the light, but toward it, like dark petals turning to a quiet sun. The rain outside muffles, as if the sound has been pressed down by an unseen hand. The family feels it, each in their own way. The father's chest tightens, his rational mind scrambling for an explanation, even as his body responds with awe. The mother's eyes fill, her heart torn between fear for her child and the overwhelming sense that she is standing in something holy. The grandmother closes her eyes, her hands trembling lightly, not in terror, but in reverence. Aurora does not flinch. She sits very still, her small hands resting on her knees, her breath slow and steady. "He is closer," she whispers. "Closer than yesterday, closer than the last rain." The moment doesn't last long. The lamp returns to its normal brightness. The sound of the rain grows louder again. The shadows fall back into their usual places. If anyone else had walked into the room at that exact moment, they might have thought nothing had changed. But for the McDowell family, nothing is the same. Later that night, after Aurora has fallen asleep, her parents sit at the kitchen table with the grandmother once more, voices low, eyes red. "I can't pretend this is nothing," her father admits, fingers pressed to his forehead. "I felt something. It was like the whole room was being watched from the inside." Her mother nods, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I don't want to lose her to this. Whatever this is, I don't want her to grow up carrying something too heavy." The grandmother listens quietly, then speaks. "Maybe she is not carrying it," she says. "Maybe she is simply the first one willing to name what is already here." They fall silent. Outside, the rain finally stops. A deep, weighty calm settles over the neighborhood. No cars pass, no voices rise from the street. The air feels freshly washed, but also strangely charged, like the pause between lightning and thunder. At 3:11 a.m., Aurora wakes again. She does not sit up right away. She lies still, eyes open in the dark, as though listening for the last remaining space between here and there closing inch by inch. Then, in a voice barely louder than a breath, she speaks into the quiet room. He is almost at the door. No one hears her. Her parents are asleep from exhaustion. Her grandmother has finally surrendered to rest. Only the darkness hears. And in that darkness, for the briefest moment, there is the faintest sensation, a soft pressure against the fabric of the night, like a hand about to knock. By the time a second week passes, days no longer feel like separate units of time. They feel like steps, small, quiet steps, leading towards something none of them can fully imagine, yet all of them now expect. The world outside remains unchanged on the surface. Children still hurry across the schoolyard, backpacks bouncing. People still queue at the bus stop, faces lit by phone screens. The River Ness still glides under the bridge, cold and indifferent. And yet, for those who live inside the McDowell house, everything seems wrapped in a soft, invisible countdown. Aurora wakes each night at 3:11 a.m. with the same gentle certainty. She no longer needs to describe what she hears or sees. Her family knows that whatever approaches has not turned back, has not hesitated, has not lost its way. It is simply coming. One afternoon, the sky over Inverness hangs thick and low, the clouds piled like folded wool. Aurora walks home from school with her mother, their steps slow on the damp pavement. The air smells of rain that still hasn't fallen. "Do the others feel it?" her mother asks suddenly, surprising herself with the question. Aurora looks around. A cyclist passes. A woman closes an umbrella she started carrying too early. A dog barks once and falls silent. "Some do," Aurora answers quietly. "They don't have words for it. They just feel restless or heavy or wide awake when they should be tired." Her mother swallows. "And you?" Aurora's gaze lifts to the sky. "I feel ready." That night, the grandmother suggests something she has not dared propose before. "Maybe we should pray," she says softly, sitting at the edge of the sofa, hands folded. Not to ask for it to stop, not to demand answers, just to stand where we are and admit we don't understand. Her son-in-law hesitates. He has not prayed properly in years, not with intention, not with his whole self. But the house feels too full of unspoken things, and silence has become its own form of confession. So they try. Not a formal ritual, no rehearsed lines, no raised voices. Just three adults sitting in a dim living room, speaking softly into the air, acknowledging that something larger than their fear and logic is moving toward them. They thank, they tremble, they ask for protection without knowing exactly from what. They ask for courage without knowing what they will need to face. Aurora sits on the floor nearby, listening. "He hears you," she says simply, when they fall silent. Her father looks at her, eyes tired. Is he close enough to answer? Aurora tilts her head as though listening inward. He is close enough to feel what happens in this room, she replies. Close enough that your words don't have to travel far. In the days that follow, other small disturbances appear, not violent, not alarming, just out of place. A picture frame hangs slightly crooked despite no one touching it. A candle wick glows for a second even when unlit, as though remembering fire. The clock in the hallway hesitates between seconds, then catches up, ticking twice in rapid succession before returning to normal. Aurora notices each one, but she doesn't point them out dramatically. She only watches with a quiet tenderness, like someone observing the first leaves of spring pushing through frozen ground. One evening, the family decides to walk along the river. The air is cold, but not harsh. The sky is a pale grey blanket, the edges tinged with violet as the day begins to fold into night. The water moves steadily, dark and reflective, carrying along fragments of light from street lamps. Aurora walks ahead, her grandmother beside her. The adults behind them speak in hushed tones, as if the river is listening too. They stop at the center of the bridge. Here again, Aurora murmurs. Her grandmother glances down. This is where you said the boundary was thin. Aurora nods. The wind stills. For a moment everything seems to pause. The breeze, the traffic noise, even the low murmur of the river. The world does not fall silent. It leans inward. Aurora closes her eyes. In that suspended second, all three adults feel it. A pressure in the air, not heavy, but undeniable. Not like something descending from above, but like something expanding from within the fabric of reality itself. Her father's breath shortens. Her mother grips the railing. The grandmother's eyes glisten. Aurora opens her eyes again and looks not at the sky this time, but at the surface of the water. He is not far, she says, almost in awe. He is passing through everything, even this. The moment releases. The wind picks up gently. A car crosses the bridge. The river resumes its ordinary murmur. But ordinary now feels like a costume the world is wearing. Back at home, the weight of what they are experiencing grows heavier, yet somehow more bearable. The fear that once tried to claw its way into every corner of their minds has been replaced by something quieter, more solemn, a sense of being present for something they can witness, but not control. Her father begins writing notes on a small notepad he keeps in his pocket. 3:11. She woke again, rain, lamp brightened, shadows, shifted bridge. All of us felt it. He doesn't know why he is documenting it. Perhaps to prove to himself later that it was real. Perhaps to leave a trace behind, in case words become difficult to find. Her mother, meanwhile, starts moving through the house differently. She no longer sees rooms as just spaces of domestic life. The kitchen, the hallway, the living room all become places where something unseen might arrive at any moment. She straightens objects not for tidiness but for readiness, as though preparing for a guest. One late evening, as she folds laundry on the bed, Aurora walks in, barefoot, silent as always. "Mom," she asks, "if he stands in this room, will you look at him?" The question makes the air quiver. Her mother's hands freeze on a half-folded towel. She doesn't answer right away. Fear wrestles with longing in her chest. "I don't know if I can," she admits finally. Aurora nods, as if she expected that answer. "You don't have to see him to be seen by him," she says. "He already knows you're afraid, and he's still coming." Her mother's knees weaken slightly. She sits down on the bed, staring at her daughter. Are you afraid? Aurora thinks about it, truly thinks. I don't like the weight, she confesses. Sometimes it's hard to breathe. But I am not afraid of him. I'm afraid you won't believe what I'm seeing. The honesty in her voice pierces deeper than any vision. That night, the sky over Inverness darkens in a way that feels different. There are no storms, no lightning, no thunder, but the darkness itself looks thicker, as if layered. Aurora wakes without the aid of the clock. She sits up before 3:11 a.m., already listening. When the digits on the nightstand finally shift to that familiar number, she is ready. The silence that follows is unlike any that has come before. It is not just deep, it is aware. She swings her legs over the side of the bed and stands. The floorboards under her feet feel warmer than usual, as if heat is rising from somewhere beneath the house. She walks to her door, opens it slowly, and steps into the hallway. The air there is different too. Not cooler, not warmer, just thicker, like air that has been filled with meaning. Behind closed doors, her parents sleep uneasily, drifting in and out of restless dreams. The grandmother curls under her blanket, her hands clasped even in sleep, as if still holding on to something unseen. Aurora moves toward the living room. Nothing extraordinary waits for her there. No blazing light, no shaking walls, no voice echoing through the ceiling, just the familiar furniture, the lamp, the quiet. And yet, everything is different. She walks to the center of the room and stops. He is at the threshold, she whispers to the dark. The lamp, still turned off, glows faintly again, not as a flicker this time, but as a single, continuous breath of warm light, like the first faint glow of dawn before the sun lifts its head over the horizon. Aurora closes her eyes. He is here, she says softly, not fully, not unveiled, not in the way the world might expect, but present. Somewhere between one heartbeat and the next, the invisible distance that has been shrinking night after night becomes almost nothing. Almost. The true opening has not yet occurred. The heavens have not fully parted. But the house stands now at the very edge of something irreversible. And a child, in the quiet center of an ordinary living room, stands facing a presence she does not see with her eyes, yet recognizes with every fiber of who she is. The night before everything changes does not announce itself with thunder. It arrives quietly. The day leading into it feels strangely ordinary. The sky over Inverness is a flat, pale grey. The river moves with its usual steady current. People carry groceries, walk dogs, answer emails, and prepare dinner. The world keeps turning around its invisible axis, unaware or unwilling to admit that something has been drawing nearer step by careful step. Inside the McDowell house, the atmosphere is different. No one says it out loud, but they all sense it. A subtle heaviness in the air, a softness in the light. The way sound seems to land more gently on surfaces, as if the house itself is listening more than ever. Aurora moves through the rooms with a calm that feels almost unearthly. She pauses in the kitchen doorway, in the hallway, by the window in the living room. At each place, she rests her hand briefly against the wall, like someone greeting familiar thresholds. Her father watches her from the corner of his eye, heart pounding in a way that has nothing to do with exertion. Her mother folds and refolds the same dish towel without realizing it. The grandmother sits in an armchair, rosary forgotten in her lap, fingers interlocked as if holding something much more fragile than beads. As evening falls, clouds press low over Inverness, erasing any view of the stars. The sky is a uniform sheet of darkness, uninterrupted by moonlight. Yet there is a peculiar brightness in the house, not from the lamps, not from candles. Just a sense that the shadows are thinner than they should be. No one suggests going to bed early. They stay together in the living room. The television remains off. The only sounds are the occasional creak of settling wood and the faint hum of electricity in the walls. Time moves, but it feels less linear, more like a slow turning toward a single, inevitable moment. At some point, Aurora stands. "I won't be alone tonight," she says quietly. Her mother's voice trembles. "You don't have to be alone, sweetheart. We're here." Aurora looks at each of them in turn, eyes clear, gaze steady. "I know," she replies. "He knows too." They do not ask who she means. They already know the answer, even if they cannot define it. Minutes slip into hours. The clock in the hallway climbs relentlessly toward the now familiar time. 2:58 a.m., 3:03 a.m., 3:07 a.m. The grandmother's breathing grows shallow. The father's hands tremble where they rest on his knees. The mother grips Aurora's hand so tightly she's afraid she might hurt her, but the girl doesn't pull away. At 3:10 a.m., something subtle but undeniable happens. The air cools, not sharply, not enough to see their breath, but enough for goosebumps to prick their skin. The faint background noises, the distant traffic, the almost inaudible tap in the pipes, the soft vibration in the walls, fade down to almost nothing. The house does not go silent, it goes attentive. Aurora's eyes lift. The clock on the table changes. 3:11 a.m. The moment the digits shift, the room deepens. Light bends in a way that cannot be measured, only felt. Shadows soften at the edges, as though their boundaries are being gently erased. The lamp in the corner is still turned off, yet a warm, dim radiance begins to bloom across the room. Not coming from any visible source, not arriving all at once but slowly, like a sunrise beneath the surface of reality. No one speaks. Her father's chest tightens with a fear that is not like any he has known before. It is not the fear of danger or pain or loss. It is the fear of being fully seen, down to the deepest hidden places of himself. Her mother feels tears spill over without warning. She is not sad. She is not happy. She is simply overwhelmed by the sense that something immeasurably vast has just leaned close enough to feel her breath. The grandmother grips the arms of the chair, her knuckles white, her eyes shining. She has heard a lifetime of stories about holy moments, but none of them prepared her for how quiet this would be. How gentle, how unbearably near. Aurora steps forward into the very center of the room. Her small figure seems impossibly fragile in the midst of that strange, forming light, yet she is the only one whose body doesn't tremble. She lifts her face as if looking at something or someone, standing just beyond what their eyes can register. For a heartbeat, for a breath, for a long suspended second that seems to stretch itself outside of time, the house feels impossibly full. Not with furniture, not with air, with presence. It does not speak, it does not show a form, it does not shake the walls, it simply exists there, in a density of stillness that feels like the answer to a question they never knew how to ask. Aurora's lips part. When she speaks, her voice is soft but unwavering. It carries through the room like a thread pulling all of them together. "He is already on his way," she says. She has spoken those words before, but this time they do not sound like a warning or a prediction or even a description. They sound like a confirmation of something already decided, already moving, already unfolding deeper than anyone can see. Her father feels something inside him collapse, not into despair, but into surrender. The desperate need to explain, to categorize, to choose between real and not real breaks under the weight of this unspeakable nearness. Her mother feels as though someone has placed a hand over her heart, not to stop it, but to steady it. She is suddenly aware of every regret, every doubt, every quiet prayer she only half believed anyone heard. All of it lies open, gently held. Her grandmother cannot hold back a whispered exhale that sounds almost like a sob. "Who are you?" She breathes into the quiet. No voice answers, but the light warms. Aurora closes her eyes. For a moment her face is illuminated in a way that looks almost impossible, soft, radiant, pulsing faintly with the same warmth that fills the room. Then, as quickly as it gathered, the strange brightness begins to fade. Not like a light being turned off, like a presence stepping back across an unseen threshold. The walls resume their ordinary stillness. The house remembers its sounds. The shadows return to their usual familiar places. The clock continues ticking. 3:12 a.m. 3:13 a.m. No one moves. They sit together in the quiet aftermath, hearts pounding, eyes wet, breath unsteady. The living room looks exactly as it did before, and yet everything is altered, not outside, inside. Aurora opens her eyes and looks around. "He didn't come to frighten us," she says softly. "He came to let us know the opening is real, that what is on its way has already begun." Her father wipes his face with the back of his hand. "Is he gone now?" Aurora considers this carefully, then shakes her head. "No," she answers, "just veiled again, further than a breath, closer than a lifetime." Her mother reaches out and draws Aurora into her arms, holding her as if she wants to anchor both of them in this strange new reality. The grandmother bows her head, her lips moving silently, not in ritual, but in raw, wordless gratitude. They do not sleep after that. They sit together until the first grey light of dawn pushes gently at the edges of the curtains. Birds begin to sing, cautious at first, then bolder. The world outside returns to itself. No one in the city knows what happened in that small house by the river. No headlines are written, no footage is captured, no miracles are recorded in the ways people usually recognize. But 4 people will never again say, "Nothing ever really happens here." In the days that follow, Aurora stops waking at 3:11 a.m. She sleeps through the night like any other child. The house feels lighter now, but not empty. The sense of waiting has shifted into something else, an awareness that there is more to reality than what they can touch, and that they have stood, if only for a moment, at the edge of that more. Sometimes, when the clouds part over Inverness and a narrow, almost vertical beam of sunlight breaks through the sky, her father pauses just for a heartbeat and remembers that night. Her mother finds herself watching Aurora when she thinks no one notices, searching her daughter's face for traces of that unearthly calm. She finds something there, soft, quiet, unshakable. Her grandmother returns home eventually, carrying with her the memory of a silence that once felt alive. And Aurora, she goes back to school. She draws other things, plays when she feels like playing, laughs when something is truly funny, not to hide, not to distract, but because joy has found a place next to what she knows. Yet every now and then, on a still evening when the sky over Inverness is heavy and the light fades slowly, she will stand by the window, look up, and smile very faintly, because she remembers the opening, the nearness, the presence that did not fully arrive because it was never fully absent. And somewhere beyond clouds and seasons and years, beyond explanations and arguments and labels, whatever was already on his way still is, not finished, not cancelled, simply unseen. If, one night, the heavens began to open in your own home, not with thunder, not with spectacle, but through the quiet certainty of a child, would your heart recognize it? Would you dare to believe her? Or would you look away and call it only a dream?